While wandering on YouTube, I fell upon a few videos talking about libertarianism, and I wanted to talk about it because it's a useful leeway to talk about a bunch of other subjects, and most importantly, we'll see if a libertarian state is possible or even desirable. So, libertarianism is a rather simple concept to grasp. Less power to the government, more power to the people, less restriction on the market and the laws for supposed greater freedom, which seems great. The main problem libertarians have is taxes. For them, taxes are basically theft. It forces them to pay for things they won't necessarily use, and, well, why pay for someone else's problem when you could use that money for yourself? On the social side, libertarianism is generally a progressive movement that would remove restrictions and laws on drugs or many of the personal aspects of our lives. Many were for gay marriage, and many other progressive decisions the government can make or have made. But for them, those restrictions and laws wouldn't have existed in the first place in a libertarian government. So it seems that libertarianism aims for more individual freedom, and it also seems to be a common sense view. The government should not be able to tell us what to do, how to live, or who to love. But for the more observant people, libertarianism brings a whole lot of issues. The first one being, where do we place the line between individual freedom and anarchy? What I mean here is libertarianism sees the government still with its police force, army, firemen, and laws. But asking for individual freedom is fine if you know where the law stands. The problem here is rather simple, and answering it with a common sense argument, say just the worst offenses like murder, theft, and rape should be punished by government, would create an obvious issue on what is acceptable in certain cultures and cannot be in others. The best example of that is gun ownership. In some countries, people find it impossibly stupid to sell weapons to untrustworthy and possibly untrained people. But in some other, it's totally fine and sometimes even considered a human right by gun owners. Now, obviously, it's a little caricature of the US, but you get the point. Laws are necessary, and picking where the laws stand, while not just a libertarian question, is important. To come back to gay marriage, it has only recently been allowed in a few countries, and in some others, it is still considered a capital crime. The problem here being that laws and common sense are highly dependent of the culture, and what is acceptable for some could seem as insane for some others. The second problem is that taxes are necessary if you want a police force or any government-funded systems. Because nothing is free, the government needs the people who depends on these systems to pay for them. So if you want to remove taxes, you cannot ask for laws to be enforced. No, you can ask for government-funded firefighters. The best argument I can give on how taxes can actually increase your economic freedom is on health insurance. If the system makes it so everyone pays for everyone, you're not forced to go into bankruptcy if anything you're not in control of happens. You'll also have a safer retirement and cheaper higher education. Taxes, if well used, let you have a safer economical life as an individual. And it also makes it so no matter what your starting point is in life, be it from a poor or a rich family, you can get an education and have the same chances as anyone else would. This leads to the biggest issue with libertarianism in my opinion, which is the freedom in the market, because companies will obviously abuse of that freedom for profit. They could become monopolies and oligopolies, and be even harsher on individuals. In that case, a free market would be even worse than taxes. The best example is once again health insurance. In the US, insurance is more expensive on the individual than with taxes, like there is in France. Now, of course, there's an extreme to avoid when it comes to taxes and government help, as not to fall into communism or fascism, and it's rather difficult to find a line, which is the same problem with libertarianism. It is too easy to fall into an extreme, in that case, anarcho-capitalism. But we have to agree that the libertarian system would mostly work for companies instead of the individuals. As we have seen many times in the past, the capitalist systems work outside of ethics, and removing regulations for a free market would be a grave mistake as it would be impossible to ensure a fair one. And for the people that think capitalism is a fair system, what would stop companies from creating monopolies or oligopolies if you remove the restrictions and laws stopping them from doing so? Nothing would stop a rich company from buying out its competitors, or making it difficult for them to compete in any ways. Like acquiring the platform on which they want to sell and refusing to sell their products, something that actually happened with a glasses company a few years ago, when Luxottica bought out Oakley by simply refusing to sell the glasses in their stores. And since they were the owners of most of the stores that sold glasses, it became impossible to compete. It is rather obvious that this sort of practices would only flourish in an environment without any regulation or less regulations than there is today. Libertarianism is a pipe dream, and I believe it's rather similar to anarchy and communism in the way that it seems to be something to strive towards, but it's impossible to reach. For a collaborative anarchy, not talking about chaos, the problem would be that with all this freedom, we would be crushed by those not working with the rest. Same with communism, where there's no incentives. Some would be able to leech off the work of others. Libertarianism would permit the more powerful individuals to solidify their power and enforce their own kind of taxes, and leech off the individual's work. The problem is a deeply human one. We cannot make everyone work for each other without a significant modification in the education system, or without incentives to do so. And that's what taxes are for. Since the individuals won't help each other, the government takes care of it himself, by funding systems that helps the one that need it. But I have to agree that there are many things that would be better if unregulated, from sexual orientation to drugs. The thing that feel the most personal to how we live our lives seem to be where we should let people make their own choices. And once again, the common sense argument raises a question: where is the line between a protective law and a harmful one? But philosophy aside, who is pushing for those ideologies and policies? Huge companies, of course. Who benefits more from a freer market without suffering from any of the social backlash? The Silicon Valley is trying to push for those ideas to be more accepted, and have even said that progress would be faster if they didn't have the government regulating them or putting them under scrutiny when they create something new. That's of course ignoring the fact that the government provides goods and services to companies to help them innovate, and the control and policies are to help us, the population, from dangerous products. Because without those regulations, profit will come at the cost of even more problem for us, from employees to consumers. The worst part is, there's even less incentive for innovation if a company can buy its way out of competition. So they want leaner regulations because they just want to have more money at the expense of everyone else. Who would have seen that coming? Immediately, I have no proof that companies would violate all laws of ethics just to benefit themselves, and that in capitalism, ethics and morality are nowhere to be found. Oh, wait. We've seen countless times companies and rich people go against any kind of good sense just to benefit themselves. It is impossible for anyone to say that this doesn't happen, because you can just look at what happened with Facebook, EA, Nike sweatshops, or any of the largest companies on earth, and see that companies will do anything for profit. The whole net neutrality debacle was something that really shows that most companies only care about profit, not about the products, nor about their client. To come to a sort of conclusion, I would like to say that a freer market doesn't equate to freer people. It just lets companies reign on the people worse than the government. Because while the government should have a responsibility to care for the people, which it admittedly violates sometimes, a company will always only act for itself. Libertarianism only seems to be great, but if you look a little deeper, it's a flawed ideology that would only lead to extremism.